This was one of the worst days of my life. Why? Because everything went downhill afterwards. It was nothing but a black streak in my life. And it all started with a phone call. I remember every single detail of it. The words, the short breaths. They seared themselves into my memory like a hot brand. I vividly recall chatting with Vasilisa Petrovna, aka Vazia, while the phone on the console remained silent. More often than not, it's quiet, allowing us to sip tea or play beautician at work. Thankfully, in our small town, emergencies don't occur daily. Usually, overly cautious residents call us, alarmed by seeing smoke drifting from a neighbor's window due to burnt scrambled eggs, or tearful elderly women worried about rescuing cats stranded in trees. The most significant event lately was a fire at the brick factory, during which 3 workers succumbed to carbon monoxide poisoning. Naturally, there's also that particular case. The phone suddenly rang. I distinctly remember gazing at Vazia, anticipating she'd pick it up. However, she gestured wildly, indicating her hands were smeared with chocolate roulade. So, I reluctantly took the call. After introducing myself properly, the person on the other end spoke. His voice, well, it's hard to compare it to anything else. Like sharp claws scraping slowly across one's back, deeply gouging the skin. Utterly repulsive. "Hello," he whispered quietly, briefly, panting heavily as if he'd run a marathon. "Hello," I responded nonchalantly. Various idiots occasionally ring us out of boredom or under the influence. "You have such a lovely voice, miss." He chortled coarsely, sniffing loudly. "And what might your name be?" "You've dialed emergency services, not a matchmaking service," I retorted flatly, exchanging a weary glance with Vazia. She knew instantly. Another waste of time caller. Sympathetic, she smiled at me. Continuing professionally, I asked, "Are you experiencing any issues? Do you require medical assistance, police intervention, or fire department dispatch?" "Oh, indeed, I'm facing some difficulties." He chuckled once more. "So please, dear, reveal your name. It will expedite communication between us. It'll greatly ease my burden." "Fine. My name is Nadusha," I sighed, rolling my eyes upon hearing Vazia snicker nearby. "Does learning my name relieve your stress, Nadusha?" He repeated it as if discovering it for the very first time, followed by a contented sigh. "Hope. How I've longed for you in my life." Initially, I failed to grasp the double meaning. I recall lifting my gaze skyward, struggling to suppress an annoyed groan. This senseless banter began draining me. I almost hung up, intending to direct him elsewhere before doing so. However, something made me pause. What if this man stood teetering on the edge of a rooftop, calling emergency services as his final lifeline, grasping desperately for a sliver of hope to remain among the living? Frankly speaking, I honestly couldn't give 2 hoots if yet another loser crashed headfirst onto pavement. Simply put, then I'd be asked why I didn't respond to the call, why I hadn't sent special units to assist him. Besides, my vacation was only a month away. Yura and I had already bought tickets, found temporary accommodation. Well, let me return to the story. "Where are you now? Please give me your address," I asked, waving Vazia over. We had a specific signal regarding suicidal calls. Petrova wasn't happy when I interrupted her tea break, but still wheeled her chair closer to the console. "I'm home," he said softly, coughing slightly. "Apartment 58, Gogol Street number 18. Do you know who Gogol is? A writer." "I do. A very good writer indeed." I typed in the address and pointed it out to Vazia. "Are you alone at home?" "No, I'm with my wife." "That's great. Can you pass her the phone?" "No, I can't." "Why not? Where exactly is she?" "Well, Nadenka." He chuckled oddly. "She's everywhere around the apartment. On the kitchen floor, in the bathroom, bedroom. Even here in my arms." Admittedly, I sat frozen for several seconds, unable to grasp what he meant initially. Then a chill ran down my spine as I realized the implication, vividly imagining the scene. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath to gather my thoughts silently. Mouth only, I told Vajja that we had a mutilated victim situation. Her reaction wasn't fear, it was sheer surprise. Eyebrows shot upwards while her mouth drooped downward. With round face and glasses, she looked comical. Normally, I would have laughed, given different circumstances. Vajja has worked longer as an operator than me, having heard plenty of strange things over the years. We've dealt with domestic disputes before, but dismemberment was new territory for both of us. The most extreme case I'd ever encountered early in training involved some alcoholic woman hysterically confessing she'd murdered her boyfriend using a kitchen hatchet. Sorry, getting sidetracked again. What I remember is saying calmly into the receiver after a brief pause. Okay, I understand perfectly well. Aren't you shocked by this news? He asked. Seemed almost hurt. I killed my wife, you see. Yes, sir, I fully comprehend the situation. And you're completely unfazed by this revelation. He gave a sarcastic grunt, followed by a cough. You're remarkable, Nadia. I glanced at Vajja, watching her alert the cops and paramedics via her station. My job was simply to keep talking to this man, control him somehow, prevent further damage. So, nearly composed, I asked casually, as if engaged in friendly chit-chat. Why did you do it? He began speaking rapidly, suppressedly, as if holding back many pent-up emotions finally released upon finding a listener willing to hear him out. She drove me insane daily, nagged non-stop, forced me to look for new jobs. Have you any idea how hard it is for a disabled person to find employment, especially in our godforsaken place? You probably don't know, Nadezhda, judging by your cheerful tone. Anyway, Nadusha, this morning I snapped. She came up to me again in her apron with pockets and began for the umpteenth time. When will you find a job? How much longer will you be sitting on my neck? At the same time, he was making faces, shouting in a squeaky voice. Not only did she itch under my ear, she pulled the cord out of the socket. Moi comp passed out. The rink was drained. That was my last straw. I grabbed the first thing that came to hand. I don't remember what it was. A lamp, I think. I threw it right at her head, her uncombed, shaggy, dirty head, because this smelly underscore had been washing for 4 days to save water. Then I went into the kitchen and got 2 knives. One is long and the other is wide for chopping meat. I'll start chopping. I beat her and beat her. She looked like a pig. She looked like a pig with her fat hanging on her sides. Then she shut up. Do you know what you've done? I didn't answer. And then he added in an ominous whisper. I turned on the computer and continued playing. I remember that Vajja called me softly. I guess my face wasn't very good. I just waved her off, listened to what she was saying next. Then after an hour or two, when I was playing with the guys from the bottom of my heart, I thought, what should I do with this carcass? He calmed down considerably, but he was breathing heavily. I tried to drag her to the bathroom, so that the dirt from this pig would be less, but it was so heavy. Nadia, would you see this goguryeo of meat? You've never seen anything like this, I'm sure. I could put all this meat in freezers and be full until deep winter, but the thought of eating this stuff made me sick. So I just chopped it up and scattered it all over the apartment. Well, just for a laugh. She loved watching idiotic shows on TV. So I put her giant ass on the couch, put the remote control in my right hand, and threw our safe in my left. It's ridiculous. And I threw her tits in the bathroom. At least let the dead wash them. I just dumped both my feet on the kitchen floor. She was constantly rubbing herself there, emptying the refrigerator. Her head, he laughed, and his laughter made me feel cold, and her beautiful head lies on my knees. I stroke her hair, just like a sleeping kitty. And you know, Nadia, she's so light. She's never been this light. For the first time in 12 years of our marriage, I can pick her up and not break her back. And she's finally silent. She looks at me with her stupid eyes like pigs and says nothing. Nadia, why don't you shut up? Are you listening to me? Of course I'm listening, I said, my voice not shaking. I'm talking to my friend on the phone. I listen carefully to every word you say. Nadia, he drawled and exhaled horribly hoarsely, as if he had sucked in air. Where have you been for so long? My hope. You are a wonderful woman. You are a wonderful listener. I would like a wife like that. On the phone, I heard a siren wailed and an ambulance arrived. I remember taking a deep breath and closing my eyes, and why work was done. I wanted to go to the boss right after this conversation and take a day off, then go home, buy myself a drink and sit waiting for Yura, covered with a blanket. But this __ didn't shut down. It was his last phrase. I remember it by heart. Oh, my guests have arrived. See, Nadia, it's going to be hot. I only managed to say into the phone, wait. And he passed out. And just a second later, the windows in our office began to shake. I saw a natural fireball coming out with a roar a couple of kilometers away from us, behind the roofs of houses. Cars on the street howled at once. Some girls started running, and I jumped up from the chair. I remember clutching my hair. A whole range of emotions swept through me. Horror, disbelief, something else. I wanted to sit back on the chair, but I missed and sat right on the floor. That was the worst moment of my life. When you look out the window and realize that at this very moment, people are dying in the fire and under the rubble, and there's nothing you can do. Then I found out that 26 people died because of this freak, including 3 Felshers. After the murder of his wife, this __ brought gasoline cans and gas pumps from the garage, balloons. I wanted it to burn out specifically. It was lucky that most of the people were at work and at school, but still so many people. It's both strange and sad that none of them could smell the gas. I was interrogated by the investigators for several hours until late at night. They tried to put it on me that I couldn't talk the psycho out of striking a match. Then they waved their hand and let him out. Yura was waiting for me on the street. They wouldn't let him in. If it wasn't for him, I would have walked the dark streets all the way home in a zombie state. It was good that he was there. I was given a long day off at work, but anyway, there was still a lot of time before the trip to the sea, and I was afraid to leave the house. I thought if I stuck my nose out, they'd come at me with accusations. But no, fortunately, they didn't even get to me. On social media, nobody's ever heard of me. The people only cursed that bastard Roman, Zueva. Guess how it was renamed in the comments? I read information about him, about his wife Lisa. Surprisingly, she wasn't as ugly as he described her. Yes, it's full with an unhappy, haunted look. I saw a picture on his page. They're sitting on a bench. She shrank down. She smiles awkwardly. Her hands are plump. She clasped them on her stomach, and he threw his arm over her shoulder, holding a bottle of beer in the second. He was thin and lanky, barely able to fit on the bench, with long, thin legs like a grasshopper's, and sneakers stained with old mud. His yellow teeth stick out like a fan. His nose is crooked after a fracture, and his eyes are clouded after drinking. All in all, he's a disgusting, nasty guy. And there are a lot of comments under this photo with curses and wishes to burn in hell. I also left mine there with similar wishes. I got depressed. No, of course. They didn't make a diagnosis, but for all it felt like it was her. I lost my appetite completely. I didn't have any strength to just walk to the bathroom and wash my face. Yura also took time off and was almost constantly by my side. He chatted about something, turned on some movies, read me all sorts of funny stories from the web, tried to distract me, stir me up a little. He's so caring. Nevertheless, on the third day I forced myself to go to the ruins of the house and lay flowers at the spontaneous memorial. I thought I needed it. The blown-up house looked terrible. One entrance of the 5-story building has completely collapsed. It looked like there were two separate old Khrushchev dolls next to each other, and a huge pile between them. Shapeless junk. Everything was surrounded by bright ribbons. Rescuers were working on the ruins, and volunteers were bringing them food and water. And there was a crowd of people. They were standing on the sidewalk, in front of so many flowers and various toys that the ground beneath them was not visible. Practically no one was talking, just quietly whispering to each other. I remember hearing a sob. There, an elderly woman was kneeling on the dusty asphalt in front of the memorial and clutching a wide photo frame to her chest. When she pushed it away from her, I noticed a young couple with a small child in their arms. It gave me an electric shock. I realized that this happy family could have completely perished there. I remember getting sidetracked. My head was spinning, and if it hadn't been for Yurka, I would have collapsed. He grabbed me by the arms and sat me down on a bench. They didn't pay any attention to me. They just looked at me sympathetically, and that was it. They probably thought I'd lost someone there. Yura, I remember, said to me then, "No, I shouldn't have brought you here. It would be better to lie in bed and watch a movie." I wanted to, well, I didn't know how to choose the right words. I wanted to, as they say, to pay tribute to the dead. I thought I'd feel a little better myself, but so far, it's only gotten worse. Yura, tell me again, it's not my fault. No, it's not your fault. You did everything you could. When Zuev called you, he had already made a decision. As we were leaving, I looked at the house at the hole where the apartment on the third floor used to be. I didn't seem to think anything at that moment. The look somehow attracted itself, and I saw in that greasy hole, where the wires hung from the ceiling like vines, the figure of a man. She was strange, black. I thought it was probably the lifeguard upstairs, although they were still downstairs. When we started walking, I turned around once more, and I didn't see anyone in this hole anymore. Maybe this was the beginning of a nightmare, or maybe it had already started with the call. Yura took the day off, but they pulled him to work that evening practically. Looking at the night, they had some kind of emergency. I won't say exactly what. These details have somehow faded from my mind. I calmly let him go, promised to wait for his return, and turned on the TV. I turned out the lights in the whole apartment to make it more atmospheric for watching a movie. It was repeated on one channel for the 100th time. The series Don't Be Born Beautiful. Yurka can't stand it, but sometimes I look at it or just turn it on the background. That's when I decided to take a look again. Don't bother your head with anything. Somewhere in the middle of the episode, I started nodding off, rubbed my eyes, then went to wash my face to cheer up a little. She turned on the cold water and bent over the sink. She washed her face, rubbing it hard. Then she straightened up and saw a face behind her, right behind her left shoulder. Or rather, it was hard to call it a face. He had no skin, lips, or eyelids. The exposed muscles were swollen with traces of black burns, reddened, bulging eyes. The eyes looked at me through the reflection. I screamed and spun around, accidentally, knocking the soap dish off the sink. There was no one behind me, but for a second, I smelled burnt meat, too distinct as if it had been shoved under my nose. My heart leapt to my throat in horror. There was little air. I ran back to the gym, turning on the lights everywhere along the way. I went out on the balcony, opened the window there and stood. For a while, I convinced myself that I was just imagining things because of my nervous tension. It was just that the hallucination was too vivid. I thought I should start taking a sedative before going to bed. Probably. After about 20 minutes, I calmed down a bit, turned around to go back into the gym. Then I heard my name being hoarse, somewhere on the right side. My heart almost broke again. I stood in the middle of the balcony, afraid to step over the threshold. The chandelier was burning. I saw a beautiful room and there was no one there. The TV continued to mumble, so I was relieved to see it. The only thing that bothered me was that there were no characters named Nadia in the series. I chalked it up to an advertisement that popped up unexpectedly. I really didn't want to think about mysticism. I forbade even a fleeting thought about myself. I wanted to believe it. I didn't tell Yuri anything. She greeted him with a smile. He was very tired, so he immediately fell asleep. And I went with him. I just couldn't sleep for a long time. She listened to every creak and rustle in her own apartment. In an apartment building, especially an old one, the walls are thin. You can hear the neighbor sneaking into the kitchen at night, but I still shuddered at every sound and snuggled closer to the snoring Yurka. I guess I was only able to fall asleep in the morning. The next day, Yura unexpectedly offered to go on an overnight picnic. He said a little shift would be good for me. The surroundings. Honestly, I'm not a fan of sleeping in a tent, even if there's a river nearby. There are too many bugs, spiders, and other nasty things in nature. But I still agreed. I trusted Yuri. I had to pack up and go with him to the nearest hypermarket, stock up on groceries. I didn't understand what we needed to take at all, so my husband was in charge of all the packing. We probably looked funny from the outside. He was beaming with delight, running from one shelf to another, telling a crazy story about his trips with his father as a child, and I was silently pushing the cart with the look of a zombie tired of his existence. We stayed a little longer in the special department for gardeners and hiking enthusiasts. Yurka looked at the barbecues and the tents that had been laid out and was considering whether to take a new, more spacious one. I was aimlessly turning my head around between the aisles. About 10 meters away from us, I saw a strange figure again. At first I didn't understand who it was. My first thought was that the man was wearing an unusual dark suit with red streaks. He was just standing in front of a small clothing department, but he started to turn around. The movements were broken and unnatural. His head and right arm, bent at the elbow, were twitching rapidly, as if in a fit. He turned half sideways. I saw the same creepy face that I had imagined. In the bathroom. I don't know how I didn't scream. In horror. I just squeezed my eyes shut so that this hallucination would disappear. After all, this sentinel can't be real. I exhaled and opened my eyes. It was standing right in front of me, in front of the cart that I was clutching tightly. It was a living, charred corpse. I could see how his ribs were sticking out under the peeling skin, how the torn muscles on his arms were hanging, and how a black charred finger was pointing at me. And that smell was burning, too. I remember how I screamed and jumped back. She turned over and landed with her ass on the hard floor. The dead man immediately disappeared, and KO. A frightened Yura and another woman jumped up to me. They were both sure that I had just slipped on the newly cleaned floor. Yes, it was better as an excuse. How could I tell Yura that I saw a dead man? Roman Zuev? I was 100% sure that it was him. After what I saw, I didn't want to go to nature at all, especially to spend the night in a tent, but also to stay at home, where I first saw a ghost or what it was. I was scared. I became even more nervous. The next night I didn't sleep at all. I listened to the sound more carefully and probably thought of half of it myself. Or maybe I really heard footsteps in our hallway and heavy breathing. Once I felt the smell of burning, but it quickly dissipated, so I didn't understand if it was real or if I had inspired it myself. I only managed to sleep during the trip. In the car, I calmed down a little, watching the landscape change outside the window, and suddenly I passed out. Yura woke me up satisfied when he had already set up the tent and lit a fire. I chose a beautiful place on the banks of a wide river with an old willow tree growing in front of a small wild beach. On a weekday, there was no one but us and 3 teenagers with fishing rods on the other shore. That made me happy. It was only there in nature that I realized that I missed the peace and quiet of the bustling city, and the desire to leave for the sea as soon as possible has increased threefold. What about me? I dreamed of lying on the golden sand, roasting in the southern sun, and then diving into the cool, soft, salty water. Yura and I had a great time by the river. For 2 whole days. We swam, fried sausages and potatoes over a campfire, and listened to music on the radio. He caught some fish and cooked a delicious fish soup. I've never eaten like this in my life. I also slept in the tent during all this hectic time. Apparently, the fresh air had such a good effect. I didn't even want to leave. And I stopped thinking about the blown-up house and about his dead body. It wasn't until we got home that I started putting clothes in the closet from the camping bags, and Yura was in the kitchen, washing dishes. I pulled a swimsuit out of my bag, distracted by something. It seems that Yura asked something. I answered him, put my hand into the bag without looking, wanted to take the next thing, but touched something disgusting, something rough, sticky, and very cold at the same time. I remember being very surprised and thinking at the fish that I had managed to put it in the wrong place. No, it wasn't a fish at all. There was a human hand lying there, badly burned, with a charred bone sticking out. It wasn't until I looked into the bag that I noticed this sickening smell of burnt meat. You don't get scared at first. I made it. I felt very disgusted, to the point of nausea. I screamed at the top of my voice as black, gnarled fingers grabbed my arm. And hold on tight. I still remember tactilely that nasty touch and the voice. I definitely heard him wheeze. Talk to me, Nadia. It was Zuev's voice. I won't confuse him with anyone else. His hand quickly let go, and I slammed into the closet with a fright. Yura, of course, came running right away at my shout. I had to lie that a huge spider had gotten into the bag. Yura knows how scared I am of these bastards. I searched the whole room. I wanted to nail him. I was very confused. That's an understatement. I was so terrified and completely at a loss of what to do next. I didn't want to consult with anyone. They would have sent me to a mental institution right away, or at best offered to visit a psychologist. Well, he would have pointed to the door of the asylum anyway. I was afraid of Yuri talking about his visions, too. I was afraid he would look at me like I was crazy. It would be a blow to my heart. After returning from the picnic, I felt worse. Harry's scent was all over the apartment. I was afraid every second to see a scary figure or hear an ominous whisper. I caught a glimpse of him 3 more times in reflection and a couple of times with side vision. A twitching silhouette. One night I was awake again and I definitely heard his footsteps. I could hear the old floorboards creaking in the hall, and my bare feet barely moving on the linoleum in the hallway. Then the door handle to our bedroom clicked down, and the hinges creaked for a long time. I turned to the wall, nuzzled Yura's shoulder, and squeezed his hand. She squeezed her eyes shut. I was so afraid to open my eyes and see a loved one instead. A terrible burnt face. I could feel the dead Zuev standing by our bed, wheezing and wheezing. He looks at me through the blanket, studies every curve of the body. It was lucky that my husband woke up. I squeezed his hand too hard. He then asked anxiously, "Did you have a nightmare?" He asked gently and stroked his hair. "Yes, it's like a dead Roman Zuev is chasing me." I decided to answer him that way. I remember how I was shaking with fear. Yura turned on the light, went to the kitchen, made tea with chamomile. It helped me a little. I was able to sleep. And I began to have doubts that the problem was in my head. After all, I was completely normal. Really, after that conversation on the phone, am I losing my mind? No, I started thinking the other way, that Roman's ghost was really visiting me. Zueva. So I searched the internet and found a good medium, to Oglai Velisov. This woman also participated in all kinds of shows, and the reviews about her work are very high, and I would never go to a random fortune teller's grandmother. I needed a pro. I told Yura that I would go for a walk in the park. He was just sitting down with friends to play online shooting games. It was the The most convenient moment for me to go to a psychic without my husband noticing. She lived, it turns out, not far from me, just 2 stops away. Everything was so interesting. At home, the surroundings were lovely, the skulls on the shelves, the candles were black, the stuffed birds. There were all kinds of strange paraphernalia on the walls, such as beads made of bones or diamonds with coins around the edges, and the smells of some herbs. Believe me, it's much better to smell them than burnt flesh. Aglaia made an impression from the doorway. I didn't have time to ring the bell, and she already opened the door for me. Such a statuesque woman in an old-fashioned black dress with the veil. She threw it back on her head and stared at me with piercing eyes. Her color is so unusual. Lilac. She looked at me for a few seconds, scanning my insides, and then she said, "I see your illness. He came after you, eh?" I turned around automatically, but I didn't see anyone behind me, although a chill ran through me. Aglaia invited him in, led him into her living room, and sat him down at a round table. She had a beautiful glass ball there. Inside it is a figurine of a ballerina girl. 4 candles burned around the ball, as if illuminating the ball from the inside. Aglaia looked at me through it for a while, then she said, "Quiet. Like that. The soul is restless, evil, a murderer and a suicide. She's clinging to you like a parasite. Can you help me?" I asked also, in a whisper. I remember how excited I was when I started to wipe the lock on my jacket. I was afraid that she would refuse, and I didn't know what to do then. I probably would have had to contact another specialist, but the medium looked at me with confidence, which made my heart feel better. "You came on time," she replied sternly. "A little more, and the parasite has grown. I wish I had the strength. Then he could really hurt you, not just scare you." She got up from the table, took out a wax-stained round mirror from the chest of drawers, put it on the table, and left the room for a while. I brought a plastic bag from somewhere. There was something so viscous, there was blood all over it. It turned out to be a liver. Aglaia dumped it in front of. She moved the candles closer to the mirror and picked up a knife with a black handle. She was cutting this liver and muttering something. "It's probably some kind of spell." Then she got up and told me to sit in her place. To be honest, it was unpleasant for me to watch sliced raw liver. It immediately resembled Zuev's body. Bulging, red muscles, peeling skin. Aglaia took a bunch of some raw herbs from the shelf, lit them on a candle, and began to walk in circles, waving them. There was a lot of smoke, and the spicy smell made my head spin. "Look in the mirror," she said. "When you see him behind you, then shout to leave. Scream until it disappears." Okay, I got it. I moved closer to the mirror and began to look into it very carefully. It took maybe 5 minutes until I saw a familiar figure behind me. He was standing right behind my chair, his head tilted to the side, his ragged ear almost touching my shoulder. His mouth was slightly open, and I could see a long line of red saliva running down between his teeth. He was staring at me. At that moment, I wasn't so much scared and disgusted as I was angry. That's why he picking on me just because I was the last person he talked to when he was alive. Why did he, who killed so many people, not go to hell but continue to terrorize me? I was very angry then. I shouted loudly, which made Glaya jump comically in surprise, and I continued to yell at the dead man, as the medium advised. Go away. Leave me alone. Nadia. He wheezed and held out his burning-smelling hands to me. NGT, my hope, you will be mine. NGT, go away, get out, go to hell. I screamed, clutching the tabletop with my fingers, so much so that the nail on I broke my right arm. Zuev retreated from me, resentfully, tried to mumble something else, but I took it and covered him with a good obscenity. You won't believe it, but it helped. He growled, shook all over as if in a fit, and disappeared into thin air. I was immediately released. It became so easy. I even started crying. I was happy at that moment. After that, I was fine. I didn't hear any strange sounds. I didn't smell any strange smells. I didn't see anything so frightening. I started sleeping just fine. And I paid 8,000 to Gaia, but that's the least I've lost. According to the medium, I am quite. She could have lost her life. I was very grateful to her. Yura and I gradually started packing up for the sea. I didn't care about anything else except this coveted trip. I got back to normal and started going to work. My colleagues said I looked great, and they were happy for me. But just a couple of days before departure, a call came to my remote control. I also memorized it by heart. Rescue service, I'm listening to you, I said quickly. There was silence on the line, just the crackle of static. I tried to speak again. You never know. Suddenly the person on the other side of me doesn't heard. And again, nothing. I was about to hang up, but there was a hissing sound. Hope, have you figured it out yet? Yes, it was his voice of Roman Zuev again. I was just paralyzed with horror at the time. I couldn't breathe or squeak, but everything inside was on fire. Vazia probably looked at me strangely and maybe said something to me, but I didn't notice anything. I could only hear him muttering, Nadenka, why are you avoiding me? I thought we got along. We're like kindred spirits. Nadusha, my wife, the cow, wasn't standing next to you. Tell me, what do you want with this Yurka? He's on. The faggot looks like his hairstyle. You need a real man who can satisfy you in everything. You need me. We perfect for each other. I remember how I managed to take a shuddering breath and barely moving my lips I whispered, I sent you away. You're gone. How did you get back again? What for? NGT, I've come for you, Nadusha. He laughed hoarsely. I won't leave you alone. I'll take you with me. Next, I think I tore the headset off my head and threw it somewhere. I don't remember exactly. Vazia shouted at me, saying, What are you doing? Are you crazy? I didn't explain anything to her. I grabbed my bag and rushed home. I didn't get on the bus. I got there on my own. Yura was not at home. He went to visit a friend. I was upset, of course. I wanted his support at that moment, at least just hugs, but at the same time I didn't want to bother him. So I spent a lot of time rushing around the apartment alone like a restless animal in a cage. I dropped all calls from my colleagues and superiors. I wasn't up to them at all. I was panicking, almost hysterical. I remember wanting to call Yura and really pull him away from his friend, but then I remembered about Aglaya. Yura won't help me. On the contrary, she'd think she was crazy, so she was the only one who could help again. I called her in a clipped voice, swallowing back tears, and told her what had happened. It's a very strong spirit, she told me. You need to fight back before things get worse. I will help you mentally. Don't be afraid of anything. GLY's words inspired me a little, but hope. They calmed me down, though. I remember a terrible noise in my head. I remember how it was very scary when the house exploded. I just had the feeling that everything was about to be decided, that in a few minutes, a monster from the other world would come for me. I didn't know how to resist him. Aglaya didn't really explain, so I just ran into the kitchen and got the sharpest, strongest knife. Yura had just sharpened it. I went into the hall, gripped the handle of the knife tightly and waited. I knew that Roman Zuev would definitely come, and he showed up soon. I heard how the floor creaked under his footsteps in the hallway, and then his hideous burnt muzzle cautiously peeked out from behind the jamb, as if afraid of me, still so timidly called by my first name. I suddenly felt funny and I laughed. My fear was gone. A wild hatred for him burned in my chest. I was ready to tear it up. Burn in hell. I screamed at the top of my voice and rushed at Zuev, holding the knife in front of me. He backed away from me, tried to close his eyes, but I quickly took a swing and stuck the knife right in his right eye. He screamed so hard that he stunned me, but I was glad. If he's yelling, it means he's in pain. It's good. Let him suffer, let him die again. I beat him and beat him. She stabbed wherever she got, in the face, in the arms, in the chest, in the stomach. Blood was constantly splattering on me from his wounds. Got it in my mouth, in my eyes. I didn't care at all at that moment. I just wanted to chop him up. I do not know at what point he stopped twitching, stopped. Come out, call me. I didn't notice when he finally died. And when I realized that, it became so easy for me. God, how free my soul has become. I finally got rid of my nightmare. I was completely free. I could. It's safe to go to the sea with your loved one, and absolutely not be afraid that at night something might be standing next to my bed, or calling me out of the dark with a creepy voice. I could go to the store again, walk in the park, and generally do my favorite things. Now I could do everything without fear that an ugly ghost would suddenly appear and start beckoning to me again. I'm back to normal. Nadezhda Isakova finally fell silent. After a long tirade, she smiled happily and quickly batted her long eyelashes. She didn't blink much during her story, just stared in front of her eyes. He looked at himself with glassy eyes, his eyelids wide open. Her facial expression changed so much during the highlights. of her story. She was constantly gesticulating, drawing something in the air when she couldn't describe it in words, straightening her long, blonde, tousled hair stuck together to the right of the dried blood. There were brown spots on his light blue shirt. Nadezhda was not at all embarrassed by this. At least she washed it, hands and face, from traces of someone else's blood, and then, at my request, the girl did not notice anything strange about herself at all. And, as I was told, she was very surprised when a police squad entered her apartment. I'm not a psychologist, but it seems she's completely insane. Her next sentence confirmed my suspicions. Okay, can I go home? Yura will be here soon. I have to clean up. I exchanged a cold glance with my partner. He was somewhat puzzled, confused, looked away from us to the side, rubbed his fingers on his shaved chin. The kid is still a beginner, but he's got so much pressure at once. First, the corpse of a homeless man in a well, then an explosion in a house, and now a stabbing incident. I clicked on the laptop, waking it up from sleep mode. A dozen crime scene photos appeared on the screen. The walls and floor in the corridor are thickly splattered with the blood of a young guy, Yuri Isakov. There's not much left of the face. The neighbors recognized him only by his clothes and the tattoo on his neck. I don't think there's any point in showing the girl these photos. She either won't understand, or she'll go on a rampage. It's like the yellow house is crying for her. Thank you so much for your story. I smiled tightly, closing the laptop. We can't let you go yet. There are some formalities that need to be settled. You will be escorted to your cell. Oh, good. Isakova was upset for a moment, but quickly regained her frightening, satisfied smile. These are temporary difficulties. The main thing is that I'm going to the seaside with Yura soon. Tell me, have you been to Sochi? Isn't the sea cold? No, I wasn't there. Still smiling sourly, I got out from behind the desk, tucking my laptop under my arm. Thanks for talking to me. Goodbye. I shot out of the interrogation room, almost knocking down the board guards in the hallway. The young colleague followed and remained gloomily silent, with his head down until the office itself. It was only when he sat down at his desk, leaned back in his chair, grabbed his hands for the bast and gave it laconically, and NBSP, underscore underscore and NBSP. And you can't argue. I checked if there was water in the electric kettle and pressed the boil button. I need to drink some coffee to cheer yourself up and distract yourself a little from an unpleasant conversation. I've seen all sorts of things since I was 7 years old, and I've talked to different people. But this Nadia causes a special rejection. It was as unpleasant as possible to sit in a closed room without windows with her. Maybe it's because she's lost her mind, and I haven't talked to psychos that often in my career. I don't think it's going to take long. I poured out a 3-in-1 bag of coffee, my tall mug, and poured boiling water over the powder to the very edge. The girl, impressed by the tragedy, developed acute schizophrenia. Perhaps she already had it, but such a sight made the disease worse. Some kind of trigger happened and Nadia killed her husband, mistaking him for the late Roman Zuev. Okay, the exact diagnosis is for her. Let the doctors put it on. And we need to find and summon this Aglaya. It's going to be an interesting conversation with her. She can go as an accomplice. She's going to Sochi and NBSP __ and NBSP. The partner muttered, losing tiredly in the temple. Yes, I'm going to drink coffee now, too, and start punching out the address. I took a sip of a hot, strong drink and walked slowly through. He walked past his desk to the window, pulled back the folds of the blinds, and looked up at the rounded roof of the shopping center across the street. I remember that ill-fated morning when I saw the fireball of an explosion a little further away.